How is it that you have likely had the varietal Cinsaut without ever knowing it? And in this week's tip of the week, we're going to talk about some things you can do to deftly maneuver and avoid having one of your guests order an expensive bottle of wine at your expense. All of that coming up next. Today's wine is the varietal Cinsaut. This is a wine that originated in southern France. You can find it blended heavily in regions like Chateauneuf-du-Pape in Southern Rhone. And it is very often found in the regions of like Provence, Tavel, or where this one is from, the Languedoc. And this is often used to make rosés. So it might not necessarily say on the label what varietal was used in making a rosé, but this is very likely in a lot of the rosés you've had, along with other grapes like Grenache. Now, what's interesting about this one, this is made by a couple, Elisabeth and Francois Jourdan, and on their bottle right here, they have the words Vignes, and that means old vines. You've probably seen that on bottles of American wine before as well. This one says ancient vines on it. Sometimes they just say old vines. Why this is really particularly important with the Cinsaut is because Cinsaut is a very high yielding grape. They grow in huge clusters on the vine. And the problem with this, it sounds like great, high yield. That's a lot of grapes. Winemakers have to love that. And in a way, yeah, they might, because you can therefore make and sell a lot of wine. The problem with high yield, though, is that the vine can only produce so much sugar. So, not to get into fifth grade science too much here, but there's the process of photosynthesis where it's taking, the energy that it creates from carbon dioxide and sunlight and nutrients and water from the soil, and it's converting it into sugar and alcohol, or it's converting it to sugar. And that sugar is then going to go into each grape. And if you have a huge cluster of grapes, well, that sugar gets divided up pretty evenly, and each one doesn't get all that much. So the grapes are going to lack a lot of concentration and a lot of flavor when you go to make it into a wine. Now, if you have something made with old vines, in this case, these vines that made this particular bottle were 48 years old. So that vine does not produce as many clusters and produces smaller clusters of berries compared to a younger vine does. So that's why you see winemakers often brag about old vines, because that gives you a sign that these are vines that have smaller clusters of berries, maybe fewer berries in each cluster, and so therefore they're going to each get more sugar and more concentration of flavors, therefore presumably making for a better wine. Now, at one point in time, Cinsaut was the 4th most planted grape in France, and even as few as just 10 years ago, it was the 25th most planted grape in the world. Now, it's been decreasing in quantity a little bit, but because it's so drought resistant and tolerant of challenging weather conditions, this is a grape that will do well. And because of its very floral nature and low tannins, this is a wine that can be blended with other grapes that maybe are really tannic and can bring it down and soften it, add those great floral aromas and red fruits, which make it so good as a rosé wine. So that's probably why you've maybe had Cinsaut and never actually known it. Here we go with the Cinsaut. Oh, that was lame. All right, the color on this is really nice. It's a pretty, I'm going to call this medium intensity. I mean, it's lovely, but medium intensity ruby red. I can see the lines really well through this. It very much reminds me of a Pinot in terms of its color intensity. On the nose, so I expected and I got floral on this. Something to try is when you go to smell your wine, I learned this year, put your nose near the top of the glass instead of at the bottom to start with. And some of those floral notes that come out first tend to go towards the top. I don't know if this is violet, but definitely is some nice floral there. It just kind of smells perfumed, if that makes any sense. It's not very specific, but all right. There is a lot of red fruit here, which I really like. There's some tart cherry, maybe raspberry and pomegranate. And there's this weird doughiness, which I can't make any sense of why that would be. This was aged in concrete. There's no aspects of oak here, but there's this like not yeasty or what you would typically call toast that you would get in like a champagne or a Chardonnay maybe. It just smells like a lump of dough sitting on the counter. It's faint, but it's there. It's interesting. All right, moving on to the taste. It's really nice. It's dry. There's a little bit of tannin, but it's low. I just got this little drying element throughout my mouth. It's kind of nice. The tannin level, or I'm sorry, the acid level, fairly high. I'm going to call it medium plus. The body of this is fairly light, which I kind of expected as well. I mean, you could tell by looking at it, and the alcohol's pretty light. It's actually medium, 13%. Yeah, that sounds about right. Kind of medium alcohol, not really a burn, smooth going down. When the alcohol's a little lower like that, and the color's kind of giving it away like this, yeah, the body tends to be a little bit lower as well. So, yeah. The flavor intensity, though, is higher than I probably would have thought given the look of it. I'm going to go medium on the flavor intensity. And I'm still trying to evaluate the finish here. I would say it was a medium finish. Yeah, great red fruit flavors on the palate. Medium intensity on the palate overall. The raspberries there, definitely a tart cherry sensation. I don't know how to put it into words, but that perfumed smell, I'm getting aspects of that on the palate, and I don't know how you describe the way perfume would taste.
Sure.
So if you like Pinot Noir, if you like Rosé, if you like Gamay, you like the Beaujolais wines, those kind of light-bodied red fruit red wines, I think this is worth the try. Yeah, I'm going to keep drinking it tonight. I'm going to score this 6 points. The balance is good. That's probably where I'm going to give it the most points. The acidity and the fruit. The tannins are there, but they're not gone. You know, a lot of things are just kind of medium about it or on the medium low side. So good balance. The length on it, kind of a medium length on the finish. I'm not going to give it a ton of points for that, but a little bit. And the intensity of the flavors, you know, it's going to lose a little bit there, and it's going to lose a little bit for complexity. This is not a complex wine. This is a great sipper, and there's nothing wrong with drinking a 6 point, you know, on a 10-point scale, drinking a 6 point wine that doesn't have a lot of complexity to it. It's a nice wine. It's very enjoyable, and particularly if you're a person who really gravitates towards rosés, there's a lot you're going to recognize in 100% Cinsaut. So yeah, give this a try. I think this would be good. Tonight I'm going to have this with some pork chops with a raspberry sauce on it, and I think this is going to be an excellent pairing for that. Be good with some, you could handle this with fish, some chicken. I don't think I would have this with steak or some dark meats. Any type of seafood would be good with this too. So it's a pretty versatile wine. The acid level being where it is makes this really food friendly. You could probably even have this with some tomato dishes or like eggplant parmesan. The balance and the acid there is going to make this a good food friendly wine. So if you want to give a Cinsaut a try, I think it's worth your effort. If you're a business professional like me, you've probably had a situation where you've taken a prospect or a client out to a nice dinner, hoping to discuss a little business. And maybe you've had a client who's gotten a little overzealous, went ahead and picked an expensive bottle of wine knowing it's going to go on your corporate card. So what do you do to avoid this situation in the first place? Or what do you do if it happens? How do you handle it carefully? So a couple things you can do. First, at the time of making your reservation, let it be known that the person whose name it's under, you, that it's going to be on your bill and you're the one picking the wine. And the restaurants know this. It is proper etiquette that whoever pays is the person who gets to pick the wines. So if you can establish that with the staff, they're going to know not to accept that order from someone else at your table. So when you get to the restaurant, maybe try to show up a little bit early, reiterate in person, the reservation's under your name, you're the host, you're going to be paying the bill and picking the wines. If by chance you have to arrive with your clients, or if they beat you there and you can't quite, be sneaky about it and let that be known, there's a way you can do it as you're approaching the table. So as you're being seated, perhaps say to the person who's seating you, and I'd look them right in the eye and say, "Thank you so much. My guests and I are really looking forward to a nice dinner tonight." So that has established to the person seating you, you are the host. They will then know that if there is only one wine menu to pass out at the table, to give it to you, and that you're the one who's going to get the bill at the end of the night. Hopefully this person, if it's not your server, is going to convey that to the server, so the server knows to treat you as the host. If by chance that doesn't happen and the server arrives, you're not getting the vibe that they understand that you're the host, you can just simply try it again and maybe say something to the effect of, "Hey, I'd really like to get our guests started tonight with a bottle of wine. Maybe let it open up and breathe a little bit. If you can give me a couple minutes to pick one out, that'd be awesome." So again, finding some way to establish yourself as a host. Now, all of that being said, maybe you've got a menu that has all of the wines on every single menu. So maybe a client of yours goes ahead and orders an expensive bottle despite all your clues and despite the proper etiquette. Well, I think in that case, a little blend of humor and a direct approach can make a difference. So if you don't want to just go ahead and pay for it, that's certainly an option too. But if you don't, if you're worried about submitting that expense report, maybe say something to the effect after they order that bottle of wine, say, "Hey there, Robert Parker. Maybe we hold off on the Opus One. Don Draper blank check days are kind of over now. I've got to watch what we're spending. Maybe our server can pick out something a little bit more reasonable here, and I got enough money left in the budget to do this again with you sometime before 2030. So find some way in your own way to bring in a little humor, but be direct that just isn't going to fly spending that much on a bottle of wine. Hopefully you're going to get some respect for it and they're going to back off. But ideally, all of those steps you took ahead of time to establish yourself with a host is going to prevent that from coming up at all. Thank you for watching another episode of Wine This Week with Scott Leek. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like and subscribe. Please join me next week as we move on to an interesting varietal from Italy, Cortese, better known for its region where it's from, Gavi. Until then, keep trying new wines, and as always, cheers.